In Chapter 2 of Learning from the Stranger, the author introduces yet another example of the complexity that's involved with identifying cultural differences. The chapter appears to highlight the problems that can occur when trying to assess cultural differences based on outward appearances alone. David Smith shares a story which shows that cultural differences actually moves past what we can see. He talks about being an Englishman relocating here to America. Now, the official language for Europe and America is English. But Smith talks about the word pants and how it has a different meaning in Europe versus the meaning that it carries here in the United States. And this is a great example to show that even though people speak the same language, that there still may be some cultural differences that need to be addressed. This is a great example to show the complexity of identifying cultural differences, and it's also a great example to show that there's a need to encourage and to enhance cultural competence. The theory used to enhance cultural competence is the Bennett model. Now, this is also known as the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity, or DMIS for short. This model is an individualized measure of acceptance or rejection of cultural differences that moves through a series of 6 stages. The 6 stages, which I will go over briefly, begins with denial. And denial means you are blind to any other cultures. You are rejecting any other cultures. Step 2, or stage 2, is defense, meaning that you defend your culture. No one else's culture matters. Your culture is the norm, is the standard. Stage 3 is minimization. So you understand that there are cultural differences now, and although there are cultural differences, they still don't measure up to yours, and because yours is the norm. The 4th stage is adaptation. The 4th stage is acceptance, where you appreciate the differences, and the 5th stage is adaptation, where you accept the differences and you move towards integration, which means you change the way that you think, you change the way that you behave, and you learn how to celebrate cultural differences. After reading Chapter 2, I think about and ask myself, is there anything in the chapter that I agree or disagree with? And I am immediately drawn to the information on page 2, where Smith uses the analogy that culture is like bad breath. I paraphrase when I say, culture is like bad breath. We notice it in others before we notice our own bad breath. I understand what Smith is trying to say. However, I think that it would have a stronger message or a stronger connection if he would say cultural differences is like bad breath. We notice differences in others before we notice the differences in ourselves. So as I close, I want to make 3 points about Chapter 2. The first point is the complexity of identifying cultural differences. The second point is understanding that we notice differences in others before we recognize our own differences. And the third and final point I'd like to make is the need for the enhancement and the development of cultural competence. This concludes my review of Chapter 2. Thank you.